I used to believe I had everything figured out. A loving wife, two beautiful children, and a home filled with joy. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I worked hard to provide for my family, never complaining about long hours and always making time for the things that mattered. Family dinners at 7 o'clock, bedtime stories by 8 o'clock, and cozy Sunday movie nights. Simple routines, but they were the foundation of our happiness. Then something changed. My wife, the woman I had loved for over a decade, began to grow distant. At first, it was subtle. A missed kiss here, a quiet dinner there. I chalked it up to stress or exhaustion. She'll snap out of it, I reassured myself. But as days turned into weeks, her silence grew heavier than any argument we'd ever had. The affection was gone. No goodnight kisses, no "how was your day?" Just cold stares and endless scrolling on her phone. I noticed the small things first. The way she smiled at her screen, the constant texts she couldn't ignore, the late nights when she was too tired to talk but not too tired to stay glued to her phone. I told myself it was a phase, that she'd come back to me, but deep down I knew better. My home didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like I was living with a stranger. I tried to rationalize it. People get busy, I thought. Work stress, mental fatigue, it happens. But the evidence mounted. She no longer greeted me when I came home. Once, her smile made me feel like the most important person in the world. Now, she barely looked up from her phone. She was always too busy for me and the kids, yet never too busy to laugh at her screen during dinner. I asked, "Who's so funny?" She'd respond with a dismissive, "Just a friend." I didn't want to seem paranoid or insecure, but her behavior spoke louder than any words. Errands at odd hours. Phone calls taken in hushed tones, just out of earshot. Each unexplained absence chipped away at my resolve. Then came the silence, the deliberate kind. One morning I said, "Good morning," as I always did. She didn't even glance my way. I thought she might be upset, so I gave her space. Hours passed. "Are you okay?" I asked. Nothing. By evening, I stopped trying. She walked past me and the kids, as if we didn't exist. It wasn't just indifference, it was erasure. That night, sitting on the edge of the bed, I watched her sleep. Her face was peaceful, buried in her pillow, as if everything was fine. But for me, everything had changed. I glanced at the kids' room, where they slept soundly, unaware of the turmoil. That's when I knew I couldn't let them grow up thinking this was normal. Silence isn't love, and being ignored isn't something you accept. If she wanted to act like we didn't exist, I'd show her what that truly felt like. Quietly, I packed a suitcase, the one I'd hidden months ago, just in case. Clothes for the kids, their favorite toys, the bare essentials for me. By 3 a.m., everything was ready. No note, no explanation. Notes are for people who deserve them. I took one last look at her, still asleep, and walked out, locking the door behind me. The sound felt final. It felt like freedom. The kids stirred as I buckled them into the car. My youngest mumbled, "Where are we going, Daddy?" I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Somewhere better, baby." As we drove into the night, I turned off my phone and left the GPS unused. No plan, just forward. I can only imagine what it was like for her that morning. She probably woke up slowly, stretching, assuming it was just another day. Reaching for her phone, she might have noticed the unusual quiet, no cartoons, no laughter, no breakfast smells. The silence would have felt strange, unnerving. "Babe," she might have called out. No answer. She probably checked the kids' room first, expecting to see them playing or sleeping. Instead, she found empty drawers and half-filled closets. That's when the panic would have set in. The calls to my phone went straight to voicemail. Texts went unread. Desperation would have crept into her voice as she dialed her mom or friends. "Have you seen them?" By then, maybe she started to understand. I decided to give her a taste of her own medicine, ignoring her, dismissing her, and disappearing just as she had done to me. The calls started pouring, and almost immediately, 10, 20, 30 missed calls. I didn't answer a single one. I could imagine her pacing the living room, phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face as she whispered, "Please, just answer." But I wasn't there. She'd ignored me for 24 hours, and now it was her turn to feel invisible. But unlike her, I didn't need a phone to make my point. The morning passed, and her desperation grew. She paced, called, and checked every possible place I could have gone. When that didn't work, she broke, not quietly, but in the kind of frantic, ugly breakdown where you call everyone you've ever known, pleading with them to check if I was with them. She probably called her mom 5 times, her friends too, but no one had answers because I hadn't told anyone where I was going. That's when she called the police. I could almost hear her voice in my head. My husband's gone. He took my kids. I think he kidnapped them. I'm sure she expected sirens, detectives, a full investigation, just like on TV. But that's not how it works. The moment she said husband, the cops probably told her, "Ma'am, he's their father." Unless there's a court order, it's not kidnapping. I wish I could have seen her face when she realized there was nothing they could do. She wasn't in control anymore. What did she do next? She sat down, overwhelmed, scrolling through her phone. The same phone that had stolen her attention so many times before. I wondered if she felt foolish when she saw his name at the top of her message threads. All those hidden conversations, those jokes, those messages she'd forgotten to delete. This time, every word probably felt like a slap, every heart emoji like a betrayal. That's the part one wanted her to feel, not just the silence or the disappearance, but the realization. This is why he left me. She had no one to blame but herself. I pictured her sitting there, phone in hand, tears dripping onto the screen as she reread every message she swore I'd never see. But I didn't need to see them, I already knew. And so did she. For the first time in a long while, she couldn't escape it. Revenge doesn't need to be loud or chaotic. Sometimes the quietest moves make the biggest impact. That's what I realized as I sat in that small rental house with my kids, watching cartoons like it was any other Saturday morning. They were laughing, eating cereal, completely unaware of the storm brewing. Meanwhile, my phone kept lighting up. I'd put it on silent, but I still checked. 43 missed calls, 27 text messages. The first few were normal. Where are you? Then came the guilt trips. How could you do this to me? And my personal favorite, you're hurting the kids. Oh, now she cared about the kids? Interesting. I didn't reply. By mid-afternoon, the messages shifted, apologies, voice notes of her sobbing, saying she was sorry for everything. I bet she was sitting on the couch, face in her hands, tears soaking her palms. But I didn't feel sorry for her, not for a second. If she'd cared about us, she would have noticed when I was the one feeling invisible. But she didn't. I posted a simple message on social media. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. Prioritize what matters before it's gone. I knew she saw it. I knew it hit her like a punch to the chest. A few minutes later, more missed calls, more texts. She knew it was about her. Everyone else did too. I sat back, phone in my lap, watching it light up over and over. I didn't answer a single call. Revenge wasn't about yelling or exposing her. It wasn't about telling people she cheated. It was about control. And for once, I had it. Every second of silence was another crack in her pride. I knew it. She knew it. And that felt better than any argument I could have won. She didn't quit. People like her never do. It took her about a week. 7 whole days of calling, crying, probably losing sleep. When she finally showed up at my sister's house, I was ready. I opened the door, and there she was, eyes swollen, hair a mess, like she'd been running on nothing but regret. She tried to walk past me like she still had that kind of power. I didn't move. She froze. "Where are my kids?" she asked, her voice cracking on the verge of breaking down. "Safe," I replied, folding my arms. "Something you wouldn't understand." That hit her. I saw it in her eyes. Tears welled up instantly, but I didn't budge. She tried to play innocent. "I just want to fix this. I love you. I love our family." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Love." I laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that makes people uncomfortable. "You ignored me for 24 hours, acted like I didn't exist. No love in that." Her tears flowed freely now. I was stressed. I made mistakes, okay? She stammered. Mistakes? I tilted my head, looking at her like she was a puzzle I'd already solved. Were they mistakes when you were texting him? Smiling at your phone while your family sat right in front of you? Her face dropped, like I'd ripped the ground from beneath her. Well, she stammered, her voice once full of pride now gone. It wasn't like that. Don't lie to me.
Not now.
I know everything. I leaned in, close enough for her to feel the weight of every word. I've known for weeks, but I let you keep digging that hole. Her knees buckled, and she sat on the porch, the weight of it all crushing her. I'm not here to argue, I said, stepping past her. I just wanted you to see what it feels like to be ignored, to have no control, to feel powerless. Enjoy it. You earned it. I left her there, head in her hands, sobbing into her own mistakes.